I need to read up on this. It's like a Twitter thread, like it has to be a lie, and it's not a lie. They've split.
When the news broke, it didn't come through a tearful interview, a carefully worded joint statement, or a dramatic red carpet meltdown. It came through paperwork. Nicole Kidman had filed for divorce from Keith Urban after 19 years of marriage, a split valued at a jaw-dropping $325 million, sending shockwaves through both Hollywood and Nashville. But what made this announcement unlike any other celebrity breakup wasn't the money or even the fame, it was the silence. No public statements, no explanations, no attempts to control the narrative. For weeks, the world waited for either Nicole or Keith to step forward and tell their side, but they didn't. Instead, the only story we received came from a series of legal documents quietly filed in a Nashville courtroom on September 30th, 2025. And inside those pages, written in cold, factual language, was a truth far more revealing than any interview could ever offer. It wasn't a scandal splashed across tabloids. It wasn't an explosive confession. It was math, numbers that exposed the hidden fractures of a marriage millions believed was unshakable. Because when celebrities stay silent, the paperwork speaks for them, and in this case, it spoke volumes. On September 30th, 2025, Nicole Kidman walked into the Davidson County Circuit Court in Nashville and filed for divorce. The reason she listed was the classic, almost sterile legal phrase, irreconcilable differences. At first glance, it looked like a standard celebrity split, no dramatic accusations, no finger-pointing, just a quiet end to a nearly 2-decade-long marriage. But hidden in the fine print was something that said more than any headline ever could. A pair of numbers, Rose 6 and 59. Nicole was granted custody of their daughters, Sunday Rose, 17, and Faith Margaret, 14, for 306 days of the year. Keith Urban, 59. That's 83% with Nicole and only 17% with Keith. For a couple who spent years presenting the image of a close-knit, loving family, this wasn't just a legal detail, it was a revelation. Because custody splits don't lie, they're not PR statements crafted by publicists. They're the raw, unpolished reality of how a family has actually been functioning behind closed doors. Think about it. A father agreeing to see his teenage daughters for less than 2 months out of the entire year. That's not shared parenting. That's not co-parenting. That's a pattern, one that had clearly been in place long before the papers were filed. Nicole didn't give interviews. Keith didn't fight publicly. But when Keith signed the permanent parenting plan nearly 2 months before the divorce was even announced, he silently admitted what the custody numbers made obvious. Their marriage had been living on borrowed time. No matter what they said or didn't say, those 2 numbers told the story. Chet 6 versus 59. And that's when it became clear. This divorce wasn't about a sudden falling out. It was about a quiet imbalance that had been building for years. But the custody math was just the beginning. When most celebrity divorces hit the courts, what follows is a long, messy tug-of-war over money. Years of litigation, bitter disputes, and headlines dissecting every financial detail. But Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's split, it was almost unnervingly clean. No demands for spousal support, no fights over earnings, no drawn-out legal battles over who owned what. That level of financial clarity doesn't happen by accident. It happens when both people knew, from the very beginning, that if the day ever came, the exit would already be mapped out. From the start of their marriage in 2006, Nicole and Keith had a rock-solid prenuptial agreement in place. It protected Nicole's film and television earnings, her royalties, and her assets. Keith kept everything tied to his music career, his touring revenue, song catalogs, and business holdings. Neither would receive a cent of spousal support from the other. This wasn't a couple scrambling to protect their empires at the last minute. This was a couple who had already agreed, decades earlier, exactly how the end would look. And when the moment finally came in 2025, those terms slid seamlessly into action, like puzzle pieces that had been waiting in the box all along. Nicole was already one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood when they married. She'd survived a high-profile divorce from Tom Cruise and wasn't about to repeat that financial chaos. Keith, still climbing in the music world, agreed to the prenup. Some might call it practical, others might call it cautious. But either way, it reveals something subtle yet powerful about their marriage. From day one, they built a structure designed to keep their lives separate, financially and legally. Not because they didn't love each other, but because they understood the world they lived in. And nearly 2 decades later, that structure became the silent architect of their breakup, allowing both to walk away without financial drama. But while the prenup shows preparation, the custody split shows something far more personal. Because you can plan for financial separation, you can't plan for emotional distance. Long before the divorce papers were filed, before lawyers got involved and custody numbers told their quiet truth, the real fracture in Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's marriage was hiding in plain sight. It wasn't one explosive fight. It wasn't a single betrayal. It was a pattern, the slow, steady drift created when two people build their lives on opposite schedules. For Keith Urban, life meant being on the road. In 2024 and 2025, his High and Alive World Tour took him across North America for months at a time. A touring musician at his level is typically gone 200 or more days a year. That's nearly 2/3 of the year spent in airports, arenas, and hotels. Not at home in Nashville. And while the world saw the glamour, the sold-out concerts, the spotlight, the roaring crowds, what those numbers really revealed was distance. Distance from his daughters, distance from Nicole, distance from the daily rhythm of family life. Nicole Kidman's world looked very different. Her career is built around intense, focused projects, film shoots that last for months, then periods where she returns home. Forbes named her the highest-paid actress in 2024, but unlike Keith, she wasn't constantly touring. She built her schedule so that Nashville remained her anchor, the base where she raised their daughters and held the family together. While Keith was chasing stages, Nicole was managing breakfasts, dinners, school schedules, and teenage years. And that wasn't a recent shift. It was the reality of their marriage for years. The clearest proof came not from speculation, but from Keith's own signature. On August 13, 2025, nearly 2 months before the divorce was made public, Keith signed the permanent parenting plan. He agreed to the 306-59 custody split without a legal fight. No negotiations for more time, no pushback, just his name on the line, accepting that this was how their family had been functioning all along. When a parent willingly agrees to see their children for only 17% of the year, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens because the pattern is already set. Keith's career thrived. His tour sold millions in tickets. His name filled stadiums. But at home, something quieter was happening, a gap widening one performance at a time. Nicole's career demanded brilliance, but her life demanded presence. She stayed, he left, not out of malice, but out of routine. And in the end, that routine became the unspoken truth that neither interviews nor public appearances could disguise. Because love can survive distance for a while, but not forever. Before the court filings, the prenups, and the custody math, there was a very different story. One that began not with fame and power, but with two people standing in the wreckage of their pasts, trying to breathe again. When Keith Urban entered Nicole Kidman's life in the mid-2000s, she was emerging from one of the most devastating chapters of her personal history. Her marriage to Tom Cruise had crumbled without warning, leaving her stunned and exposed under the blinding glare of global attention. She'd endured miscarriages that tore at her soul, adoption challenges that reshaped her understanding of motherhood, and a quiet, suffocating isolation that no red carpet could mask. "I felt like I didn't exist anymore," she admitted years later, a whisper that revealed the depth of her disillusionment. And Keith? He carried his own shadows. Behind the charming smile and musical brilliance was a man struggling with addiction, fighting private battles that few truly saw. Just months after they married, Keith's drinking spiraled to the point where Nicole staged an intervention. He entered rehab, and she stood by him, quietly, steadfastly, without fanfare. Their love didn't start like a Hollywood fairy tale. It started like two people clinging to each other in the aftermath of storms. Nicole wasn't looking for perfection. She was searching for safety. Keith wasn't promising grandeur. He was reaching for stability. They met not as flawless icons, but as survivors, and for a time, that shared vulnerability became their bond. Nicole, who had been left hollow by a love that vanished overnight, found in Keith someone who adored her with a raw, almost reverent intensity. Keith, who had wandered in the chaos of addiction and fame, found in Nicole a steady flame, someone who saw beyond the music and into the man. Their 2006 wedding wasn't just a celebration, it was a quiet rebellion against the pain that had shaped them. Two people saying, maybe this time, love will hold, and for years it seemed to. They became the red carpet couple everyone admired, radiant, elegant, inseparable. Nicole, with her cinematic grace, Keith, with his heartfelt tributes and songs dedicated to her. Their public appearances felt genuine, their affection almost untouchable. But the truth is, their love was built in a fragile space, a space born out of healing, not stability. And while that kind of love can be beautiful, it can also carry invisible cracks that only reveal themselves with time. They weren't legends then, they were just two hearts patched together, hoping the world wouldn't break them again. On the surface, everything looked perfect. June 26, 2025. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban celebrated their 19th wedding anniversary. He posted a black and white photo of the two embracing with the caption, "Happy anniversary, baby." She mirrored the sentiment on her own account, radiating the same warmth that fans had adored for nearly 2 decades. But behind that picture-perfect moment, the truth was already written in ink. Just 5 weeks later, on August 13th, Keith Urban signed the permanent parenting plan that gave Nicole custody of their daughters for 306 days a year. There was no fight, no visible hesitation. He quietly agreed to the terms that would ultimately reveal just how fractured their marriage had become, long before the public had any idea, and then came the whispers. When the news of the divorce broke in late September, rumors started swirling almost immediately. Online chatter fixated on Natalie Stovall, Keith's longtime touring guitarist. The two had spent countless hours together on the road, performing night after night. Fans speculated, tabloids circled, and the internet did what it always does. It looked for a scandal. But those close to the couple hinted at something less sensational and far more telling. According to reports, their inner circle had seen the breakdown coming for months, if not years. The problem wasn't one shocking betrayal, it was the routine absence, the growing emotional distance that everyone noticed but no one talked about publicly. Natalie Stovall herself is married and has been for over 17 years. The rumors were likely more symptom than cause, a distraction from the deeper issue. When someone spends over 200 days a year with their touring family and only a fraction of that with their real family, speculation is inevitable. And through it all, Nicole and Keith said nothing. No interviews, no tearful confessions, no attempts to rewrite the narrative. Their silence became almost louder than any statement could have been. Because when two people who have built a public image of devotion suddenly fall quiet, it forces everyone to look elsewhere for answers. And in this case, the answers were sitting in court documents and timelines, not press releases. Friends of the couple later admitted that the divorce wasn't a shock to anyone close to them. What surprised people was how long they kept up the performance. Red carpets, shared smiles, anniversary posts, all while the legal foundation of their marriage was quietly being dismantled behind closed doors. The signs were there. They always are. It's just that most people don't notice them until the silence becomes deafening. When the headlines focused on the divorce, the custody numbers, and the silent court filings, what often got overlooked was Nicole Kidman herself. Not the star, not the red carpet icon, but the woman who had spent a lifetime walking through storms with extraordinary quiet strength. Long before the Oscars, before her name became synonymous with Hollywood grace, Nicole was a shy little girl from Sydney. Born in Honolulu in 1967, she grew up feeling like the world was just a little too loud for her soft voice. She stuttered, froze mid-sentence, and often retreated into herself, unsure where she fit. But in the ballet studio, something shifted. The music didn't judge. The mirror didn't mock. Dance became her first language, and for the first time, she felt free. Acting came next, not as a performance, but as a lifeline. On stage, she could express what words never let her. She wasn't pretending to be other people. She was releasing parts of herself that the real world had silenced. By 14, she landed her first role. By her 20s, she was conquering Hollywood, but always with that quiet, controlled intensity that would define her career. And through that journey came tragedy, loss, and moments that would break most people. Her father, Anthony Kidman, died suddenly in 2014, the man who had been her anchor, gone without warning. Less than a decade later, she lost her mother, Janelle, after a long illness. In between, she faced the terrifying Australian wildfires of 2020 that came frighteningly close to her home, forcing her to face the fragility of everything she'd built. But Nicole didn't crumble. She adapted. She carried those wounds quietly, folding them into her craft, into her family life, into the way she showed up for her daughters. Even at the peak of her career, when Forbes crowned her the highest-paid actress of 2024, when she collected Golden Globes, Emmys, and stood on stages honoring her legacy, she never let the spotlight erase her humanity, and that's what makes her story so powerful. When the divorce filings emerged, Nicole didn't run to cameras to explain herself. She didn't weaponize the narrative. She let the facts speak, and she stood in silence, the same silence that had always been her strength. She had spent her life navigating personal heartbreak in private and transforming it into art in public. From The Hours to Rabbit Hole, from Big Little Lies to Expats, she turned pain into unforgettable performances. She didn't just survive the storms, she made them her stage. So when people saw 306 versus 59, they weren't just looking at custody numbers. They were looking at the quiet strength of a woman who had carried the weight of family, career, and personal loss, and who finally decided that pretending was no longer part of the script. Nicole's resilience isn't loud. It doesn't demand applause. It lingers, like a calm after thunder, the kind that makes you realize just how much someone has endured without ever saying a word. In the end, there were no interviews, no dramatic sit-downs, no carefully crafted statements designed to soften the blow. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban didn't have to explain anything, because the numbers did it for them. 6 versus 59. That custody split wasn't just a legal arrangement, it was a quiet confession. It told the story of a marriage where one parent showed up every day and the other was living a life miles away, not out of malice but out of choice, routine, and priorities. The prenup revealed a marriage that was always built with an exit strategy, a structure that anticipated the possibility of an ending. The touring schedules showed a family stretched thin by distance and lifestyle. The timeline showed that long before the public saw cracks, the legal reality had already been signed, sealed, and filed away. And through it all, Nicole never said a word. She didn't need to. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was clarity. She had spent a lifetime navigating heartbreak quietly, transforming personal pain into power without needing to narrate every wound. Keith Urban didn't villainize her. She didn't villainize him. The story they told the world was one of quiet truths written in legal documents, not headlines. And that's what makes this divorce different from so many others in the spotlight. There was no explosive betrayal to dissect, no PR war to follow, just a simple, undeniable reality. Love cannot survive on presence 17% of the time. Some divorces end with shouting "Matsi peace shufal." This one ended with signatures, but if you look closely, the silence itself is deafening. It's the sound of a 19-year marriage finally acknowledging what had been true for a long time, that two lives moving on parallel tracks can look perfect in public. But eventually, the numbers always reveal the truth. So, what do you think? Was this simply a case of conflicting careers and lifestyles? Or do these numbers hint at something deeper the documents don't explicitly say? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Because in this story, the numbers didn't just divide a family, they told it.